Hello and welcome to Pods from the Cop. Today we've got Ste, Jamie and Ian who will be offering their thoughts on some key Liverpool stories from this week. There's a lot to get into. So we'll start off with Joe Gomez. So Joe Gomez suffered a knee injury this week whilst on duty in training for England, which obviously adds to Liverpool's woes. And there is also talk today that FIFA may look into sort of giving compensation to Liverpool to cover the wages of Joe Gomez. So I just wondered what your thoughts were on the Joe situation, really. So I thought I'd go to Ian first with that one.
Anyone who knows me knows I'm not a big fan of international football anyway. And with the current climate anyway, with the COVID situation, I definitely don't think any international football should be getting played. And that's not just actual international football. I don't think we should be playing the European competitions either. I don't think we should be travelling from country to country, potentially putting our players at risk. I think staying in your own country now is just about doable. So to lose Joe Gomez on international duty was absolutely, it's not short of devastating, especially for how long he's going to be out for. I think he was just stepping up after Van Dijk's injury. I think he was looking as good as he's looked in a long time. So I think the injury's come at the absolute worst time possible for Liverpool and Joe Gomez.
Cool. Going on to yourself, Jamie, what are your thoughts on the Joe Gomez situation?
Yeah, it's absolutely gutting. As Ian sort of suggested there, the timing is terrible. There's never a good time, obviously, to get an injury, but an injury of that nature and in the circumstances as well is absolutely terrible. I mean, we're very hard done by at the moment. Obviously, we're suffering some horrible injuries, especially in defence. So it is a concern. I've never been a fan of international football. I've always been very much a club man, and to lose him in those circumstances is beyond frustrating. I mean, when you take into account the current situation with the pandemic, for people to be globetrotting at this time seems absolutely ludicrous to me. These guys should be at home. It's all we're able to do to ensure that domestic campaigns are able to be played out. So for people to be sort of jetting all over the world with the situation as it is an absolute joke to me. But obviously there's money to be made, and when there's money to be made, the money men really don't care about their pawns. So it's the way it is. It's something we're just going to have to suck up and sort of soldier on with. It presents obviously a superb opportunity for the likes of Nat Phillips, Reece Williams, potentially Billy Koumetio as well. If you want to look for some positive spin, maybe there's something there. But it's insanely frustrating. And to say I'm irritated would be an understatement.
Okay, Steve, so yourself, what would your take on the Joe Gomez injury?
I think there's two parts to this in terms of an answer. And the first one is I completely agree with everybody on this pod. I'm sure you do. You agree with the guys as well, Kirsty, in that we certainly shouldn't be playing football on foreign continents. We're struggling to keep things at bay on our home front within this country, and the numbers are not great. And to fill purses of smaller countries with football matches is a really bad idea for me, not something we should be doing. But the second point is, and it's one I want to make, is that Joe Gomez's injury was not brought around by something that happened on international duty. It would have happened at Kirby in the new training ground the same day. That's a patella tendon that's worn out, basically, and through wear and tear and previous injuries and what have you. So whilst I don't agree with international football at the best of times, certainly not in the middle of a pandemic, I don't even watch England play, to be honest with you, and I haven't for years. I think Joe Gomez's injury was going to happen anyway. We're just having a real rotten run of luck. Joe Gomez is having a real rotten run of luck. He's had a leg break and a serious knee injury in the last sort of 2.5 years. Hopefully he'll come back stronger than ever. Him and Van Dijk will do their sort of rehabilitation together. So they'll bond for sure, even more so than they have. They'll become sort of kindred spirits in terms of getting fit. But terrible timing, as the guys have alluded to, absolutely shocking timing. And yeah, he's a young man. Hopefully he's a fit young man. He comes back fitter, stronger and better than ever. Because when he repaired the tendons, they do say that they're stronger than they were in the first place. So yeah, not a great week for that.
No, definitely not at all. So moving on to something else that we've kind of touched upon that happened this week as well. Came through earlier in the week that Mo Salah tested positive for coronavirus. Bit of a controversial one. Obviously, there's been a few videos flying around with Mo having attended his brother's wedding as well in Cairo. So I just, again, wanted to get your guys' thoughts on this. Jamie, I don't know whether you want to chip in first for this one.
Yeah, again, it comes back to the international travel, doesn't it? I mean, it shouldn't be happening. It just shouldn't be happening at this time. It's just a frustration. I can't get my head around it. I don't know why they're being made to do it. Now, obviously, you got a situation there where there was a wedding that he attended, and it seems a pretty well populated wedding too. So not too much distancing and what have you going on there, and there was certainly no sort of facial protection from what I could see. So yeah, it's annoying. You can understand him wanting to go to somebody's wedding. You could debate whether such an event should be taking place at this time. Certainly one that was so well populated anyway. You'd have to question whether that should have been able to go ahead on itself. So yeah, it's just added frustration to an absolutely ridiculous situation with players being sort of pushed all over the globe.
Yeah, Steve, same question to you really. What were your thoughts on the Mo Salah situation with the positive test for coronavirus?
There's a good chance that Mo Salah's brother structured the date of his wedding around when Mo Salah would be likely to be playing international football and at home, for instance. We know it's been difficult in the past to try and restrict players from going to weddings and things. We've lost a few really good players over fallouts with managers, over travelling to weddings and family outings. Not ideal, of course, but if you're allowing players to travel for international football, you can't say to a player, you can't go to your brother's wedding, can you really? It's a really difficult one. It is irresponsible not to wear a mask. I think everybody would accept that, recognise that. He will be fine, obviously. He's not got any symptoms. He just tested for it, apparently, and the second test has now been done. So hopefully that will come back and be a bit of good news for us. But in the same way with Sadio, 10 days isolation, you won't lose any fitness being isolated for 10 days. It's more of a pain in the backside than it is sort of a major problem going forward. But it's further illustration that football clubs and players travelling around the world needs to come under review. If they had that conversation with him, surely he would have understood. But it is what it is. Lessons learned by everybody. A very high profile lesson learned there, really. So, yeah, not ideal, but not much we can do about it now, is there?
Ian, did you have any further thoughts on Mo Salah and the coronavirus test?
Well, first thing I'd like to say, I've got two sisters, and if my two sisters were getting married this week, there's no way I wouldn't be there. That's the first thing I want to say. Second thing is always, I'm not a multi-million pound footballer, and certainly in this day and age would make sure I would not be seen without a face covering on a video. Everybody knows there's going to be camera videos and camera phones and stuff flying around everywhere, especially at a wedding. I'm a bit more concerned about how Mo Salah didn't think he was going to get caught doing these things. I thought he should have been a bit more wise to what was going on. But like Steve's saying, if you're telling people they can travel so far to go and play football, then of course he's going to go to his brother's wedding. I just think he should have took better precautions than what he did. And like I tweeted earlier in the week, there's certain other managers that would have really dealt with Mohamed Salah in a different way than I'm sure Jurgen Klopp would. It's just the timing is horrendous. We just seem to be losing players for stupid reasons. If you're losing players for injuries on the pitch, the 50-50 challenges and whatnot, you take that and accept that. We seem to be losing players for really stupid, silly reasons, either by opposition players or international football or something stupid as your brother's wedding. because the precautions weren't taken right. It's really frustrating the reason we're losing players right now.
Yeah, I think you've summed that up really well there, Ian. So again, we can't seem to escape injuries as a discussion. So the next question was Steve Clarke today explained that Andy Robertson will not be featuring in the Scotland game against Slovakia. Apparently he's picked up a hamstring injury. So I just wondered, in general, why do you think it is that we're getting so many injuries? What is the reason? I'll go to Steve first with that one.
If you listen to what the players are saying, Aubameyang came out and said we don't have time to recuperate properly or rehabilitate properly. I'm not entirely, and I've said before, I'm not entirely convinced about that. These guys are finely tuned athletes, and the more you fine tune something, the less likely it is, the more likely it is to break. Certainly with Robbo, 3 days ago, Clarke came out and said he's got a wee bit of tightness, which suggested there was a concern. He hasn't come out and said he's got a hamstring tear or a really significant strain. There's a bit of tightness, so the sensible thing to do there is not to push it. I mean, at the end of the day, they achieved what they wanted to achieve earlier in the week. And that's the only international football match I've watched in about 3 years, purely because it was Robbo trying to get to a summer tournament. So I was Scottish for that evening. But to be fair, it's a precautionary thing for me. The club has not come out and said anything. They would have had the doctor's report. And Scottish FA have not come out and said similar comments to like Southgate did about Gomez. So I think it's a precaution. So I'm not overly concerned.
Okay, so Ian, what do you think on that? Do you think it's precautionary as well? And have you got any thoughts as to why we're getting so many injuries? What do you think it is?
I wonder whether, when you see the way Liverpool play on the pitch and they're so intense, I imagine they're pretty much the same on the training ground. So what worries me is when they go to another place to train and the changing changes, is that having an effect on our players? It might be totally nonsense, but that's one of the theories I've got. Over Robbo, I'm assuming it's precautionary because I'm sure if it was anything else, if it was an injury, Klopp and Liverpool would be like, yeah, get him home. The fact he's not travelled back and there's still another game to go that he may be fit for, I'm not too concerned. Pretty much like Ste. Yeah, I think it's just precautionary. I think not need to be terrified about just yet.
Let's hope so. Jamie, did you have anything else? Sorry to touch on that one.
Not really, but I like the sound of my own voice, so I'll add something, I guess. Yeah, I agree with the other boys. I think it's just purely sort of it was a bit of fatigue, really, more than anything else. Likely to be tightness. Obviously, they're working constantly, and they're getting very little let up. So I think he won't be playing as a precaution. But the fact he's stayed with the squad, if there was any sort of suspicions that there was a pull or a tear or something like that, there would be no doubt that he would already be back on Merseyside. So I would make an assumption, and I think it's a relatively strong assumption, that it's just purely precautionary, and we don't have anything to be unduly worried about.
Fingers crossed. Yeah, fingers crossed. Right, so Jamie, are you glad to see the back of PPV?
Yeah, I'm absolutely delighted that PPV is gone. Football's always been a working person sport, and it was a sport that was being pulled further and further away from its audience. The FA, the governing bodies, they're continually trying to milk the cow, and I think it's got to the point now where the cows are kind of dry now, and they're starting to kick back. Flip side though, the whole thing brought a really positive reaction, and it ultimately ended in a really good result. It's put some food in some bellies. That I would dare and say that probably would never have happened had they not come up with this PPV joke. But yeah, it got a response, and yeah, it's nice, the football community, because it was a people thing. It wasn't a sporting thing either. They were kicking people at the very worst time. We're all experiencing lockdowns. People have accrued sort of debt, you know, in terms of them not being able to pay the mortgages, rents. So yeah, everybody was on their knees, and it just felt like we were all being kicked whilst we were down a little bit, especially for a situation where there's so much money already in the game, and fans are still paying for it. You know, we're still paying our Sky subscriptions, we're still buying our kits, we're still funding the clubs. I appreciate clubs, obviously they've lost some revenue streams, but for me, the first thing you should be looking at is cost cutting, not a further way of milking us fans to compensate for any shortfalls. It was a disgusting move, and it's been embarrassed off of the screens. So yeah, it was a really good result in terms of PPV being scrapped for the time being, and also for the food banks as well, for those, you know, those little kids that were struggling to get a meal. Hopefully they went to bed without their tummies rumbling.
Yep, fully agree. Ste, just coming on to you. So same question again. Are you glad to see the back of PPV? And then also, as Ian touched upon, do you think they'll try and bring it back? There's rumours of January. Do you think they'll try?
Absolutely agree with the guys in the sense that football is for the working class. It was about time that they stopped trying to glean more money out of the fans. The good that's come out of it is the food banks alongside Marcus Rashford's initiative, and that young man deserves a lot of credit for what he's done. That's an absolutely tremendous show, whether he's a Man United fan or not. If there were fans in the ground, he rightly deserves a standing ovation when he comes on the pitch. What is a concern, some quarters are portraying this, that the fans should be grateful that pay-per-view's been cancelled for a month. Absolutely not. Should they be grateful? It was the wrong thing to put it out there in the first place. So there's no gratitude in cancelling it for me or for all those people who don't want it anyway. What is a concern is that the return of fans to the grounds will be debated in the coming weeks, depending on the R number and where we're at the 2nd of December, when we decide whether to open the floodgates again to shops and all of that stuff. That will make the decision. It won't be the fans that went against it last time, and it won't be the good work that Marcus Rashford did and the food banks did. It will be a decision generated by a decision to not let the fans back into the ground, a decision to potentially extend lockdown. And as Jamie said, quite rightly, it's not a cost-cutting exercise. It's a way to increase. It's a new revenue stream. It shouldn't be there. We've said this many times on this podcast. Stop spending £600 million in transfer windows and £200 million, it's a lot more than that, £200 million in agents' fees. Cut your cloth accordingly. You have to, and I have to. I was furloughed for 7 months. I couldn't do the things that I did prior to that. So it's not just me that needs to address my financial situation, it's the world of football too. And, you know, that old adage, and I've used it before, don't bite the hand that feeds you. The fans are the people that keep football clubs going, and ultimately the fans are what football is all about. So I'm not grateful for them pulling it, and I won't say thank you for them pulling it. I'll say about time, and don't do it again, because you're absolutely damaging the relationship between the clubs and their fans.
Yeah. So moving on to some sad news. A couple of hours before we actually started the podcast, it was announced earlier today that sadly Ray Clemence has passed away at the age of 72. Obviously a massive legend at Liverpool, won 5 league titles and 3 European Cups with us. So I just wanted to go around and see if any of you had any memories or any thoughts on Ray that you'd like to share. Ste, I'm going to come back to you first with that one.
Yeah, a sensible decision, because I'm a bit older than these two guys, and I will remember Ray Clemence when he played for Liverpool. Undoubtedly, at the time, was the best goalkeeper in England. I'll never understand why Peter Shilton went on to get over 100 caps for England. You couldn't compare the two. Clemence was infinitely better. Ray Clemence is without doubt at this moment in time the greatest goalkeeper in Liverpool's history. If we keep Alisson for the next 10 years and we continue to win things, let's hope in 10 years' time there'll be podcasts, or even we'll have a podcast where we measure Alisson against Ray Clemence in a conversation who's the best goalkeeper we've ever had. What a tremendous footballing man, not just a long-standing servant for Liverpool over 600 games, went to Spurs and was a legend at Spurs too, and in England's coaching setup. So a huge loss to football, really. He was a well-respected man within the industry, and you only have to look at the tributes that are coming out on social media, including him singing "You'll Never Walk Alone" with a very red Alan Brazil in the background, looking like he's about to explode, trying to sing along. So, you know, a big loss. 2020 has been a poor year for us all. So I'm going to coin Jamie's phrase, 2020 can get in the bin. We don't need to be losing any more legends like Ray Clemence. So sad loss, but what a player, what a goalkeeper. Very
sad news. Jamie, again, Ste hinted some of us are a bit older, some of us are a bit younger, but I just wondered if you had anything you wanted to add on Ray there.
Yeah, I'm a 39-year-old pup, really. So my sort of living knowledge of him isn't the most expansive, but obviously I have a sort of in-depth knowledge of the club, and I know a legend when I see one. Obviously, I see a lot of Clemence. What a goalkeeper! What a phenomenal goalkeeper! It's a horrible loss. Loss is always horrible. Nobody wants to see somebody pass away. But in terms of club association, he was just superb, you know. And what a lovely guy too. An absolutely lovely guy. And he was a real legend. And he went on to make a name for himself at Tottenham. But you only have to look at how the Kop would react when he would return to Anfield in his new colours, just to see the impact that he made on the club. Absolutely colossal figure, wonderful footballer, a wonderful man, and a sad loss. But his legend will live on for eternity.
Definitely will. It definitely will. Ian, I don't know if you wanted to add anything on there as well about Ray Clemence's passing.
Well, to be fair, I'm even younger than Jamie, so but my opinions and things on Ray Clemence are all built from stories from my dad, my nan, my granddad, videos about Bill Shankly's time of being at Liverpool and stuff like that. And I think sometimes what we forget is that the game was very different then when he was playing. It was played on different pitches. The balls were much heavier. There wasn't the padding that the players have got now, and they weren't protected as much. And you watch him now, and he's still doing the things that modern goalkeepers are doing, but most of the time, and 99.9%, he's doing it better than them. He's catching the ball rather than punching it. And I'm sure Ste will tell you, them balls, I mean, the balls I was playing with in the 90s are a lot heavier than what they are now. So God knows what they were like in the 70s and 80s. As far as personal experiences and what I've seen of him, is I can only go by how he's carried himself in interviews and how he's carried himself on the touchline. And he just seemed like an absolute gentleman. Seeing him in the England setup, and every time he spoke about Liverpool and his career at Liverpool and the fans at Liverpool, he only had good things to say. So he's a sad loss, and I think everyone who's ever watched Liverpool on the TV or stepped foot in Anfield is feeling very, very sad today, because Liverpool have lost. I know we coined the phrase, I know we overused the word legend a lot, but Ray Clemence is a legitimate and absolute legend, and it's so sad what's happened today.
I think that sums it up beautifully. Well said. So the final thing we wanted to discuss on today's podcast, obviously it's an international break, so Liverpool aren't playing until next Sunday against Leicester. But having touched upon all of these injuries, you know, positive coronavirus tests and God knows what else, I just wondered, what on earth are we going to do? Who's he going to play? Who's going to be in the back four? What's Klopp going to do against Leicester? So granted, we're a bit far off, but Ian, I'll come back to you. What on earth do you think he's going to do against Leicester? Who's he going to play?
Well, first thing, I want to calm everybody down a little bit, because as big as the losses are, I don't think Phillips or Williams have done anything for Liverpool fans to panic about. I think they both came in, performed well, and look like Liverpool central defenders. Okay, they've not played. They played West Ham and whatnot, respectively, but they've come in and they've done a job. They can only do the job against the team they're picked against. I think it'll be Matip and Phillips. I don't think it'll be Williams, just because Phillips played against West Ham. I still think Fabinho will play in midfield if he's fit, basically because you've got Maddison to worry about at Leicester. I'm not sure Thiago is ready. I think Thiago will play, but I'm not sure he's ready to marshal and look after Maddison just yet. I think that's a bit of a baptism of fire for him. With Salah being out, I think that's easy. I think Jota just slots straight in there. We as a podcast, we have confidence in Bobby Firmino. We scored for Brazil this week. I'm sure he'll start against Leicester, and I'm pretty sure he'll find his form again. I'm just hoping and praying this is just a little blip. But I'm not panicking yet. I'm going to go on the record and say I still think Liverpool are going to win the league this season. So whatever happens against Leicester, I ain't panicking just yet.
Bit of positivity there for me, and that's what we want. I think there is a lot of panic on social media. I'm probably one to panic as well sometimes, so that was good to hear. Jamie, what are you saying for the lineup against Leicester? What's happening?
Well, first things first, if I was Klopp, I think I'd approach the FA and see if we can go with a 5-side format for the game. I think that's the only way we're gonna be able to cater a full complement of players. I think I kind of see Ian's angle in terms of defence. Phillips is a good shout. For me, I may, if assuming he's fit, all fingers are pointing towards the fact that he will be. If Fabinho is fit, he may well get the nod at centre back alongside Matip. Obviously, you've got Vardy up there, who's a wily old fox, very very sort of game smart, and you want somebody who can kind of combat that and has dealt with players of that ilk before. It might be a big ask for Phillips or Williams. That's not to their detriment, but obviously he's a very experienced centre forward and former international. I think the rest kind of picks itself. I do think Thiago will take the Fabinho role in midfield. He is very good at breaking up play, and he's very smart, not only on the ball but off the ball as well. So yeah, it may be there may be some sort of real jigging around going on, and it may well change as the game goes on. Much depends on the pattern of the game, doesn't it? So you may see the likes of Phillips come on, Fabinho move up the pitch, or who knows? It's just up in the air at the moment. It's a tough one. It's a tough one to gauge. I think, like Ian said, Jota's obviously he's going to slot in seamlessly, and Bobby will no doubt be spearheading the front line. Yeah, he's not in form, but yeah, I'm not unduly concerned. I mean, he's a class player. He's a class player, and you don't just forget how to play football. He's just going through a real dodgy spell at the moment, one I'm really keen for him to get out of. But he will. Class always finds its way. Getting away with Brazil, I know this kind of contradicts my earlier point, but maybe getting away, notching a goal for his country may do him the world of good, although I'd prefer him to be back on Merseyside, to be honest with you. But he's there anyway, so at least he's done something positive with the time there. So hopefully he will bring that back, feel a little rejuvenated, and he'll be firing on all cylinders. It's never an easy game against Leicester. Obviously they got Rodgers in charge, so if you've got Rodgers in charge, you're always going to get chances. So I think if we're looking clinical, I don't see us failing to get the 3 points.
Cool. Steve, finally yourself there. You got any thoughts on the lineup for Leicester? There's a lot of discussion there from the other two guys around Fabinho, assuming he's fit. Is he in midfield? Is he in defence? What are your thoughts on that?
I completely agree with Ian. Certainly not a time to panic. Klopp is the most philosophical of men, absolutely ridiculously so. And when he came to the club, we had players that turned into superstars under his tutelage. He will turn whoever plays in that back four into giants. His ability to instill self-belief is ridiculous. So if it is Phillips or it is Williams, or even if it was a Cometio, doesn't matter. What Klopp will do with those guys is he will elevate them in their own mind, and they'll go into the game feeling strong and confident. I don't want to see the new formation purely because if Manchester City's game gave us anything, It's that playing the two sort of line deeper midfielders, someone playing in the pocket behind the front gets a bit of space, and James Maddison doesn't need that space. Ian's right about somebody needs to be in there to combat James Maddison because he's in good form at the moment. Yeah, I suspect we'll line up quite deep to stop giving Vardy the space to run in behind because that's what he wants. And that will play to our advantage because we'll be able to hit on the counter. Go with Jamie's comment. No reason not to play Bobby. You don't get your form back necessarily by sitting on the bench, and he's had a good confidence boost of scoring for Brazil. Come back to Anfield and hopefully carry on with that form left off. No need to panic. Whatever team we put out against Leicester, we'll be well prepared. We'll be very self-confident because, as I said before, that's what Klopp does. So I'm not worried, and I certainly don't want us going and doing silly things like getting an A4 list of which centre backs are available on a free transfer and bringing in the likes of Daryl Janmaat, who hasn't got a contract 4 months into the season for a reason because he's not good enough to get one. So he's certainly not good enough to play in a Liverpool shirt for me. Let's go with what we've got. Let's build these guys up, get them out there and get 3 points. And I don't really believe in more.
Okay, so I think loud and clear the message is don't panic there for the guys. So that was it for today's episode of Pods from the Cop. Big thanks to Ian, Jamie and Ste for today. If you've enjoyed today's episode, please drop us a 5-star review if you've got a couple of minutes. It really, really helps us. You can get the podcast on Apple, Spotify, all the main outlets. Yeah, we'd really appreciate it if you could help us out. And we'll see you all on the next episode.
Cheers, guys.
Thanks, Kirsty. Well done.
No
Cheers,
worries.
guys.